Hello, I'm Corey Goode, and I'm here with Mike Waskosky.
Hello.
Hello. And today we're bringing you the first installment of SSP Updates Explained. I know I've put out a lot of updates over the last number of months. I've had a whole lot going on in my personal life and in business. And Mike thought it was a good idea that we sit down and go over some of the updates and bring some of your questions in and see if we can bring a little bit of clarity, because there has been confusion. And of course, we see in the questions a lot of people come in with other information like, Cobra or Galactic Federation stuff, and they bring it in and kind of ask questions, which is kind of a mixture of the two, when my information really doesn't have anything to do with the other people's information. So there's a lot of confusion that kind of comes in. So maybe through doing some of these Q&As, we can,
hopefully address the distortions.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's so many details, and there's so much going on the planet now, so much going to happen in the future, and there's so many assumptions and overlaps of people's religious beliefs and personal assumptions around what they've heard, snippets from every other source. So it's important, I think, for us to explain. Also, I love to explain from the perspective of what the raw context says, the raw material, which absolutely still correlates with everything Corey's been saying about what the material seems to suggest is the period of graduation or the period of harvest as we transition into fourth density consciousness. So this, as we're getting closer to this, this moment where it seems like there'll be a significant shift, it seems like Corey has been getting far more details and sharing them we've been sharing them on ascensionworks.tv. And I think a lot of people still haven't even seen them. So hopefully these videos can help spread more awareness about some of these updates and the significant information he's been sharing and has been receiving. True,
yeah. Also, Fabio and his team are going to help us. He had helped us do some of, I think there were 8 or 10 SSP, I think there are 8 SSP updates that were done kind of with the robotic voice that some people don't like, some people do. He's going to put together another set of reports for us, and we're going to post them on YouTube, but also most of them are going to go on ascensionworks.tv. They're going to cover some of the written updates that I've put out that a lot of people haven't seen, about the Zulu, or they called themselves the Eotians. Their entire history. I released a update. I can't remember when it was. Maybe
might have been a year ago.
Do you think it was that? It's been a while, but a lot of people haven't seen it. And the Zulu are a very significant race and group of individuals and collective they're a big part of what's happening here in our future. And eventually they're going to graduate to become guardians themselves. And they are well on their way to doing so.
That would suggest their fifth density consciousness.
Their upper, fifth density.
Mm-hmm. All right, I think it'd be good to get started. We could ask about the most recent update, which was titled Unprecedented Breaking Update, Timelines, Earth Liberation Battles, and the Solar Micronova. And this to me is one of the most explosive updates you've ever released, because it seems as though this is the first time you were given relatively clear specifics about a timeline that it seems like we're already locked into.
Well, it's the only time I've ever really been given access to it. If you remember, like when I would report back 2016, 17, when we were talking about, let's say, the micronova, the information we had was changing because it was coming from the SSP scientists. And, their best guess at one point was 2018, and then they said, well, 2024, when we're coming out of solar minimum is the most likely. So there was a lot of guesswork, and even the ETs that we were talking to that have access to their higher consciousness anyway, but technologies, remote viewing technologies, they didn't know the exact time and date. It was, almost like in the Bible, no one knows the day or the hour. That seemed to be that way even among the angelic ETs. But finally, these new guardians that have taken over from the blue avians, they kind of go through a cycle of them being leaders out of the guardians. And the blue avians kind of faded back after they did their job. And then the new guardians came in. And I've described them. They basically are the opposite of shadow beings. They're like light beings, the shape of a sort of a human. And when they bend their arms, there's this iridescent like skin that kind of becomes visible, and it's a very mesmerizing thing to see.
And you first saw these beings at a station in 2017?
Yes, it was basically a graduation or some type of ceremony where all of the representatives from all the different 52 stars in our local star cluster attended. And there were like around 52 of them. But yeah, that was the first time any of us had seen them, and I wasn't allowed to talk about them at all, really. And there's another group as well that's going to come in after this group that appeared at the time along with them. And I can't really talk about them yet. But this new Guardian group has been working very closely with Emmy from the Eotians, from the Zulu. And Emmy has been working very closely with them, and they have been sharing information through him about the future timeline, what's about to happen galactically for us. And they laid out a timeline that started, it looked like about 2024, 2025, and stretched out past, 2033. And they gave me the timeline of what is going to be happening within our solar system. And a lot of people, they have hard time with time. Time is a very localized event. Every star that is pulling on space around it is bending space, and gravity pulling at space, that is the engine, that's what creates time, is space being distorted through gravity. Without gravity, you have no time. So each star in our local cluster has its own density and frequency, and it's pulling on space a little differently, so therefore time, they call it twist rate. Time, if you take a piece of space and pull it and stretch it out and twist it, that's what gravity does to actual space. When it twists at like every centimeter, there'll be like 2 or 3 twists, or on some star systems it'll be more dense, so there'll be like 6 twists for every like little measured area. So they measure the frequency similar to that in the space program. And each star is its own sphere, temporal sphere, with time flowing within it. And that is completely divorced from the next star system over, who has its own temporal bubble, sphere of influence. And within that sphere of influence of that temporal reality, time is flowing at its own rate. So all of these different things, these different stars systems have time flowing differently. Now, within a star, you have planets. Those planets are operating within this time temporal sphere, and relating to each other. They are all within this solar temporal time. But each planet has its own density as well, and pulls on space differently, and has its own slightly different flow of time, and its own separate time flow, because each local space is its own time frame. So that's how they pull us off the planet for 20 years. They bring us to the moon or to another planetary sphere or another area where time is flowing differently and independently from what's going on here on Earth. And after you're finished with doing your tasks for 20 years, you are removed and you're brought back to a completely different time sphere, to where the things happening in this time sphere are not affecting this time sphere. So you're placed back on Earth 20 years in the past when they originally took you, and therefore, this is all done in a way not to affect temporal flows uh, on the Earth. They take you completely out of the temporal sphere. You're in when you're on a ship. The ship has a gravitic drive, and the gravity created by that gravitic drive creates your own little time reference within that gravity well, that time well. So time does not flow like a lot of people think. Like, you think, well, a week ago, a ship was in, I don't even, it's even hard to break it up.
You could say that this is something that the whole world had to grasp 100 years ago with Einstein telling us that time is relative to the speed at which you're moving. And to me, that implies the physics of Dewey-Larsen to a degree, because the law of one verifies is legitimate, because he talked about time being three-dimensional and being a reciprocal of space. So these are two properties that sort of exchange and flow in and out of each other. And the law of one also describes gravity as being ultimately metaphysically connected, and they describe time as being time-space as being the metaphysical dimensions. So time is like the engine of metaphysical reality that's kind of pulling space in to have these metaphysical experiences. Time is the way in which metaphysical experiences occur.
That's the way all experiences occur, is through time. If you have, just a consciousness out in the middle of space, nowhere near stars or the influences of galaxies, well, there's no gravity there. They're sitting in an area to where space is really very slightly or unaffected at all. So therefore, they do not have this perspective of time. And they see things all big picture wise. They see it all at once. So perception also, the perception of a being that you're dealing with, if a being comes from such a completely different perception of time and the flow of time, it's hard to relate. And that's why they have problems communicating with us sometimes, because they don't understand they can't really understand how we're experiencing time, because they experience it so much differently.
Mm-hmm. And I think that it's similar when we're dreaming too. We have a wider lens on the time that we're existing in, and we can see into the future in the metaphysical sense with symbols, and into the past with symbols when we're in a dream state. And I think that's how people can, for example, I'm sure a lot of people have had the experience when your alarm is about to go off and you're having a dream. You'll be told by a character, oh, now it's the time, and then you wake up and because your alarm went off. And so it's like you can watch in your dream state, you can peer behind the veil a little bit to see the flow of time and how you can see beyond the limitations of the linear time, which is really an illusion of perception. And so it's interesting also to me that this year that you're saying the solar flash is predicted to occur 2033 or 2034 is also 22 years after 2011, 2012. And 2011 was the date that the law of one material flagged as being a possible nexus point for the harvest to occur or begin. It's a little ambiguous what they're saying, but they also said that there would be a period of disharmony and a period of intense polarization that would lead up to this. So they said things would get more intense until this event that they said could have occurred 30 years after 1981, which would have been 2011. But now Corey's testimony is that we are 2 cycles of the sun, 2 11-year cycles moved away from that 2011 date. So it also seems appropriate that now that we're about 1 solar cycle of 11 years away from 2012, 2011, now it makes sense for us to get this update at this time. At least to me, it made sense.
Yeah, it's hard to make sense out of why they do the things they do. But basically, I think a lot of it is they see what is going on Earth, and people have lost hope. People have become very complacent and don't really want to fight. They're waiting for saviors to come in, angelic-looking ETs to come in and save them. We're so programmed to look for saviors that they are, they're really worried about the direction that we're headed. I have, had people contacting me after I put out some of these updates, and they're like, how can we do this? We can't do this. We have to have help. We can't do this on our own. Humans cannot do this. We have advanced ETs that are doing the, we're just so outnumbered. All of this is just excuse after excuse after excuse. And, we look at what happened with Mika's people on their planet. That's one of the updates I put out. And I'm pretty sure that was made into a video. If not, it will be.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it was.
There's a lot of details there too. I'm sure you haven't put on video yet.
I think, yeah. Mika's people, they were being pushed into transhumanism by very angelic types of ETs that, were, trying to bring them into the transhumanist agenda. And about 30 or 40% of their light worker community fell for it and started getting the implants and all of that. But the majority of people on the planet finally stood up because they started having more and more totalitarianism like we are, more and more control. They wanted to track and trace everybody. They wanted to take away, their ability to make free will decisions and what they did for work, all sorts of things. It was basically communism and transhumanism being forced upon them. And they stood up. Everyone walked out of their jobs, walked out onto the streets and peacefully protested. And within 3 days, that was it. The cabal had dropped. Everything was exposed. Everyone just came out and said, I have had enough. Now we're seeing that happen in China and in Brazil, but not Europe or the United States or really Australia. I mean, we see some people coming out, people tell me, no, we've had these groups come out, these groups come out. These are small groups. What happened on Mika's planet and what has to happen here is everyone just says, forget this crap. We're not participating anymore. And they went out and going out on the streets. It doesn't have to, there will be violence, but it doesn't have to be an overall violent thing. We outnumber them basically 99-1.
And the first distortion of the law of one is free will. It's always based on free will. If we collectively choose a new reality as a planet, then we have to manifest that reality, right?
Right. And that goes back to what I was talking about these different time references, these different time bubbles. On the surface of the Earth, despite all of the freedom that's going to happen over the next decade in our solar system, on Mars in the future, when they come to liberate Mars and the other bases and facilities, that's not going to really have much of an effect on what's happening on the surface of the planet, time-wise. That is all happening in these different time references. It's affecting their time sphere. Ours is going to be affected by our own actions. And cosmic law dictates that we really created this mess. We were manipulated. We fell for tricksters and all sorts of other things. But we made this mess. And we're all collectively going along with it, even though we're saying, no, I do not consent, and we'll write on the internet, I do not consent, and hit enter. Guess what? You do consent. We're all going along with it. And at some point, we all have to stop going along with it. And one of the reasons, so that we need to make the decision on what type of future we're going to have in our local time sphere on Earth. ET groups are doing what they can to clear other planetary spheres within our solar system, but this is something that's going to take a decade. This is one of the last strongholds of the Orion Group and the Andromeda Syndicate. They are here, they are stuck here, and just a couple of other solar systems similar to ours, and they have nowhere to go. And they're forced to be here up until the solar flash, and the good ETs are coming into the outer part of the solar system and moving their way towards the inside and helping us. They're in a support role, But the people that are going to be doing all the heavy lifting are the SSP Alliance and the Global Galactic League of Nations. The report that I put out earlier describes how the Global Galactic League of Nations stood up to the ICC and declared themselves to be liberated, their own group. So the Global Galactic League of Nations has now come together and are working with the SSP Alliance to free our solar system. And it's going to take years. It's like Battle of the Bulge. They're coming in through the outer solar system. They're going to have to fight their way in. And around each of the gas giants are thousands, there are armadas of negative ET ships that are in the upper atmosphere of these planets trying to hide out until the last minute. So, there's a lot that is about to happen in our solar system. In the next 10 years, we're going to be able to see signs. They'll tell us a meteor collided with another meteor, and that's why there was a weird flash by Mars. Or they'll give us all of these weird explanations, but we're going to start seeing things. Flashes on the moon, different debris coming into the Earth's atmosphere from craft that are fighting each other. And when these ships fight each other, it's not like in the movies where you see lasers shooting back and forth and like exotic missiles flying around and chasing aircraft. These exotic weapons, you don't see a report from the weapons. There's not always a flash. And some of them, there's like electricity that travels from one node out into space and destroys ships, but you don't see as much flash and bang. The only bangs you see are when the craft actually are destroyed. And often they're destroyed by tractor beam cannons that shoot and twist space in a beam, basically. You can't see it, but when it hits the ship, that part of the ship just twists and crushes up it's like when you take a soda can and just twist it like that. And they've had huge ships crush into little balls with this type of weaponry. And we have it, and they have it. We got it from them. But that's the type of battles that are going to be happening from around 2025 moving forward. And I know you have a list, a more detailed list of, and in the description below, we will also put the
links to the updates.
Yeah, maybe just the text from the actual dates.
Yeah, we can do that.
So people can reference it during the video.
Yeah. Yeah, you originally said that apparently it takes the GGLN, the Global Galactic League of Nations led armada until the year 2025 in our time frame to work their way back to begin liberating our own solar system.
Yeah, we're cleaning up a lot of messes right now. The Dark Fleet was working alongside the Orion group, and they've been traveling many star systems, causing problems. Wars or looting, those types of things. So there are a lot of different star systems that do not trust humans at all. We're going to have a lot to live down when we start traveling after we finally win this war and start traveling into space as a civilization. We're going to find a lot of ET groups out there that don't trust us because of atrocities we had done on their planets. So the Global Galactic League of Nations and SSP Alliance have been working to remove remnants of the Dark Fleet and also this Galactic Federation of Worlds. It's a very deceptive group. They've warned dozens of planets that were being manipulated by this group and helped the planets during the nick of time. Apparently, when we were starting in the 50s, when we were beginning to make deals with these negative ET groups, there were positive groups out there that contacted us and said, do not deal with these people. Don't do it. Whatever you do, don't deal with the Orion group. But we did anyway. Mm-hmm. So now we are kind of doing that as well. warning people about this Galactic Federation group that is very deceptive and played a key role in taking over the lower levels of the Lunar Operations Command very violently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense to me that the Orion group would use every form of cunning deception they can, and I assume that these groups don't come in waving an Orion flag that makes it obvious I'm working for those other guys you know about. They try to assimilate as though they're a part of the collective, and this is apparently how the ICC became so infiltrated, right? By the fleet.
This Orion group, they've studied us for years. They know the human condition. They know our lustful, animalistic side, and they're very, very good at exploiting that. Bringing in, real tall, lean, beautiful, blonde-haired, blue eyes ETs that look like angels from all of our religions, and having them come in and not only be so beautiful, but me, this lowly human, they're attracted to me. They want, they're disinterested in me. It's this whole cunning con that they do, and they do it on other planets as well. This, as I had mentioned in this, the Galactic Federation of Worlds aren't even really from our galaxy. They claim to be, but they're from Andromeda. And the Andromeda galaxy has gone through very similar to what we have. They're further along and getting cleaned up by the good guys than we are. And in that process, some of the of their bad guys came over here, and one of those bad guys was this blonde-haired, blue-eyed Galactic Federation group that was a part of this Andromeda syndicate.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I could ask a simple philosophical question about this. So if we were to completely wipe out the Orion group from our galaxy, and the Andromeda galaxy succeeds as well, and eliminating all these negative groups, there's still going to be a similar process of evolution through third density, where people are still having to learn lessons of choosing service to self and service to others, because beings are still able to choose themselves that they want to be warlike and then get over that in time. So we don't actually depend upon the Orion group for anything.
For a negative catalyst, no. That's just because it's a never-ending cycle. There are many third density planets that are not quite to where we are. There are so many planets out there, so many civilizations that are going through their third density negative, and then they'll go through their fourth density positive and negative. So there will always be bad guys,
I see.
That are going to pop up. That's just a part of the way this universe works. And, you have to have negative catalysts, unfortunately, for the way the consciousness works, especially in the lower levels. You have to have some sort of catalyst like that for there to be growth. Mm-hmm. So it's like the universe is this big engine of experience, and that's all it is. It's just a big group of servers where all these people can play video games and forget they're playing video games and be immersed in the experience, mm-hmm. and have a new experience. And
this AI group, or the AI seed or influence that's been affecting a lot of galaxies, apparently, this has been like an experiment of our whole universe, you think? Or would you say it's of our galaxy that they experiment?
It's multiple galaxies, mm-hmm. multiple galaxies. They call it AI. It's really a mass consciousness from a different dimension, a different reality, and everything there is electromagnetic. It just comes from a different, and it was pulled into our universe, and it's an electromagnetic mass consciousness, and it works well through electronics and all of that, and that's why people started calling it, they believed it to be some sort of AI, but it's not an artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. It's a mass consciousness from another realm, and the only way we can fathom what it is sort of like we just started calling it AI in the beginning, but we understand much more about it now. It's not, people have been out there, the AI has been they tweaked the code and fixed it. Well,
Mhm.
you're an idiot. That's not what the AI God is. It's a
Yeah.
consciousness,
Yeah.
and you can't change it or affect it, no matter how positive you put your hands together and try to transmute it. That's not the way it works.
Yeah, it's possible that we need a new name. I mean, I had classes in AI programming in school, so I know it's a very different kind of thing we're talking about. But apparently, it's at like the root of why the negative groups have been so effective, because they're working together more harmoniously with the influence of the AI signal.
Yeah, and it connects them.
Mhm.
You know, it and and depending on the ET group, you would think that having like more group consciousness type of mass consciousness, more an integrated mass consciousness, you think that would be a good thing against these negative ETs, but they have a different approach to everybody. If you're a society that is psychically connected, they will approach you completely differently than a group like us that is all, broken off into our own egos.
Mhm.
They have many approaches, and they study cultures, and for eons they've been infiltrating cultures and doing this.
So, leading up to 2025, what are we going to see as a planet? Are we going to see a lot more of this end times madness and earthquakes? And is the Earth going to go through more cataclysms of different kinds?
Yes, what I was told is that this end time madness. So years ago, I talked about on my television show with David, how people were going to be getting crazier and crazier up until the solar flash, and that you wouldn't even want to go to the grocery store, because everyone's so crazy. You think we're there now? We're not. It's going to get much, much worse than it is even now. We see people in the community just went, crazy. Everyone around has just lost it, and they think everyone else has lost it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to get much, much worse. Just as I said at the very beginning of my testimony, the volcanoes are going to start going off more and more. The storms are going to become more and more energetic, and more and more signs are going to occur. There will be signs that the solar event's going to happen. It's not just going to be in like 2033, 34 in that area. All of a sudden, boom, it happens. It's leading up to it. There's little signs. The sun's going to do little things here and there that are going to start making people concerned, and it will build up, and then it will be the bigger event.
So, how did you receive this information? Was this? I think you said Emmy was giving you a holographic picture. So, were there details in this picture? How did this come through?
Yeah, it was like watching it. It was like being there. Mm-hmm. It was a hologram, but it was like it was immersive. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like looking down at a hologram. It's like the hologram grew into the room, and the participants, people there, were looking around and observing.
Mm-hmm. Maybe in a later update we can get into the details of that specific meeting. But I think I'd like to get more into the details of what the timeline is showing us. And do you have details that you can't share yet about the upcoming years that you were shown?
Yes, this was just what I was allowed to share. I didn't think I was ever going to be able to share it. Mm-hmm. I was wondering why it was shared with me. Mm-hmm. And when I was told to share it on that date, I was very surprised, but I went ahead and did so, and was very careful to share exactly what I was told to share.
Mm-hmm. I see. So I shouldn't go into too much detail right now. Before 2025, you've got a lot more detail about what happens after 2025 in your report. We get into some of that.
Yeah, it wasn't until in the timeline out in space, it wasn't until 2025 that the Global Galactic League of Nations and their allies were finally able to fight their way back to our solar system. Mm-hmm. And in 2025 is when I've talked about, you have the sun and the earth, and just outside the sun's boundary is like a brown dwarf, and close to that brown dwarf is a supergate. That's because of where our sun is located in the local cluster and within the galaxy and how it connects with the cosmic web. There is a supergate that doesn't open up just to other stars, but to other galaxies, and it's very coveted. Well, there's a replica of our moon out in the Oort cloud, and it's an exact replica. And inside of it, all of these different ET groups have been occupying it for who knows how long. And they observe, and it's a way station for groups coming in and out of this super wormhole gate, super gate. So there are all these different ET groups that monitor who is coming in and out of our galaxy, because there's only a certain number of these super gates in each galaxy. So they're very important to monitor to see if, like if an armada came in from a foreign galaxy coming in to attack us, they would have people there watching and able to report it back. Mm-hmm. So they're monitoring stations. And it was one of those ancient spheres that the ancient builder race had built. But this one's more pristine in certain areas and has the ancient architecture still intact. It hasn't been built over like in our moon. The pre-Adamites, they built on top of everything. But it's also pretty destroyed. There's a lot of, it's been through wars and battles and weird occurrences because of the supergate and things that have gone on for billions of years. Anyway, that facility is the first facility that the Global Galactic League of Nations confronts as it's in 2025, as it's coming in to begin the battle to liberate our solar system.
So it's interesting to me that there are positive and negative ET groups represented there and represented on the moon still, but the Global Galactic League of Nations group, is it because they're a human group that they have to engage in the battle, whereas other groups will refrain from battle because they're not karmically entangled in these situations?
Right. Yeah, the ET groups are giving us intel, backing us up. Like Emmy is actually portaling the Global Galactic League of Nations flagship, the Wandering Star, portals it all around the galaxy right now. You know, they can just, Emmy's been on the ship with them, and they're like, okay, well, there's this star system that, you know, we need to talk to and make sure that we can bring the rest of our armada along, you know, to get them back to Earth eventually. So, you know, they appear in that star system, make contact and get permission and do all of the protocols that are needed. But that ship was also used and method was used to liberate two colonies on Mars that were real close to each other, that worked in the same manufacturing plant. They were supposed to be the first group on Mars that was forced to take implants, these brain implants and nanites into their bloodstream. And the Galactic Federation people were there. They had brought along like a factory, like this factory that like, they're almost like little boxes, cubes, and you pull it apart and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And then it's a machine. It's weird. And then these machines create and manufacture these brain chips and nanites, and they're adapted for each person's not DNA, but each species. They have to adapt them for each species. But they had set those up within these colonies, and they were starting to manufacture the chips. They were preparing the people. Apparently there's something that they have to do for weeks, some chemical they have to consume or be injected with to prepare their neurology. And they were in that process. And then the Global Galactic League of Nations wandering star, boop, just appeared in Mars orbit and was immediately attacked by Galactic Federation ships and Orion Group ships and ICC-related battleships. They all came in to attack the wandering star. And Emmy used, Aikido principles and basically reflected back every weapon that came at them. So these ships would position themselves, would fire one of their weapons, and their ship would crush instead of the wandering star. Everything was being reflected back. And very quickly, dozens of really large ships were crushed. And that was the end of that battle. Very quickly. And then they were able to portal out, Emmy was able to create portals to portal out the inhabitants of both of these facilities or colonies before they could be implanted. And that sent shockwaves through everywhere. I mean, the fact that that ship was able to appear made their strongest battleships appear totally impotent, in battle. It really threw them for a loop. And it was after that that even more and more of the Galactic Federation and Orion Group ships started arriving in our star system, leaving all of their other outposts because they were no longer safe. And they were around Neptune, Jupiter, and Uranus. And they were, for a while, they were kind of in the outer orbits. But after this incident occurred, all of them went down into the atmosphere, and they're all like in the upper atmosphere hiding out in all of these gas giants right now. There are huge armadas hidden within the atmospheres.
Did Mika's people have assistance from the Eotians, Zulu, like Emmy?
Yes, they had help from the Eotians, and they were also working with the Blue Avians as well. They had very similar help and a very similar story to what we have.
I assume, I don't know, if they were taken by surprise that the Emmy was capable of this kind of thing, maybe it's just the fact that they were taken by surprise that there's now this kind of help that we're getting.
No one has messed with the Zulu for millions and millions of years. They don't even try. But the last thing they expected was a human ship that appeared in their local space to then have a Zulu on board using his abilities to help the humans.
That makes sense.
That was new to them. Because the Eotians or the Zulu have been very non-interventionists. They're very careful about getting karmically involved with other groups. They will help them from afar by giving them knowledge and ideas and imparting scientific breakthroughs and spiritual breakthroughs and different things into people's minds and help us that way.
Are we getting other kinds of help that we don't know about yet from them?
From them? I mean, that's one of the main things that they've done is they work with shamanic races. So they're more interested in the people in South America and Africa and in the Western United States, the indigenous people. They connect better with those people. The people that have more of a shamanic and tribal kind of way of thinking. But they work with them quite a bit. But working with, people that grow up in the West or think we're advanced, are the most advanced civilization on the planet. When we're dealing with the Eotians, the Zulu, it's just, they're so far beyond us. They really just smile at us and look at us like, we're 3 or 4 year olds. And when we say things from a 3 or 4 year old perspective, they have this grandfather perspective compared to ours, and the communication between the two was kind of limited.
So are we getting more help then from like the Anshar?
The Anshar, yeah, we're still getting help from them. They're reaching out to us. Most groups, that's what they're doing. They're reaching out to us psychically, and trying to influence us and encourage us to break out of our self-imposed situation with the Orion group.
Mm-hmm.
They can't just come and save us. That's just not how it works, despite our UFO religions. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode. We're going to be doing other episodes of the SSP update explanations, and we'll be asking for your questions on a regular basis. So I appreciate, Mike, for you coming out here and taking the time to do these recordings, and we'll see you in the next video.
Thanks.
Intradimensional extraterrestrial bipedal bird aliens called blue avians.
He said he believed a group of extraterrestrial bird aliens were helping QAnon. The idea that that is an actual idea that some of these followers believe is just, I do not understand.
I had several other insiders who were telling me about this, but nobody wanted to come forward. Nobody wanted to go on the record. Corey comes out and didn't want to go on the record either, but through a series of unfortunate events, he got nailed and he got into it. So
I was going to say, Corey, because, you've seen stuff that most people, I would say almost all people, haven't seen. Bases on other planets, portal travel, inside spacecrafts, freaking aliens. But you don't strike me as the type of guy that would be like, oh, you know what? Pick me to tell the world this crazy shit. Like, I'll do it.
In a June 24 appearance on Coast to Coast Radio, Davis said, quote, that 2 or 3 of these papers had been leaked onto the internet by someone on the Beltway. Davis was saying that someone on the Beltway was a good source for the 2 documents. This is an astounding admission. For the first time since his emergence in late 2014, a leading scientist was on the public record in effectively stating that Goode was working with a Washington insider to reveal significant details of advanced space technologies being studied by the DIA. Veteran FOIA and UFO investigator John Greenwald confirmed that the 2 documents' initial public release occurred through Goode. I saw these documents back in late December and early January, but dismissed them as they are largely sourced, credited to Corey Goode. These documents do not appear that they were released under any official channels. So the biggest question is, how did Corey get them?
They knew that at some point there was going to be a big geological, solar, whatever type of event, and that they most likely would go underground, wait out civilization falling, and then come back. Us knowing aliens, or they could care less. They're just trying to appease us until their scenario plays out.
we now are authorized also to say, Corey Goode has told me that we now can tell you that I did meet in person with my wife Elizabeth 3 different people who are very high-level alliance people. We know this. There was a binder that had all of their different intelligence certificates, classifications. It was huge. There were 2 whole boxes full of medallions and medals and coins that they get from all these different things. We saw more than enough proof. There are hundreds of thousands of people involved in this alliance. They are fighting and dying for you.
Yeah, we talk about the collective, but you got to also understand the collective is a hodgepodge. There are ET groups that have been coming here for millennia and basically dropping off prisoners and undesirables from their cultures, onto our planet and then sending them into our reincarnation cycle. So we have ET groups from thousands of different planets and cultures who are here and going through incarnations confused as hell. I was on a planet and everything was going really well, I thought, and then all of a sudden I'm born here and I have 5 fingers now, and what the hell, and you got to figure everything out, and man, this place sucks. Don't count on people coming to rapture you off the planet. That's not going to happen. You came here to have this experience. It sucks, and I know you want out of it, but you're here. And you're here for the whole thing. Tough shit.